Okay, so we have a pretty full agenda this evening because we've gotten some correspondence since our last meeting, and we want to be able to have a chance to go through that as well. I don't see anybody from the StarMet group, but I did send
Pam.
Oh, Pam, you're there. I'm sorry. I thought you were Kate Hodges. I guess my glasses need some fixing. Okay. So I'll just bring you up to date a little bit on what's happening with the Hard of Hearing group. They asked to not be on the agenda tonight after it was already posted, but they've had a meeting with Kate Hodges. I'm sorry, Kate Hodges, and she said that, or they said that she has arranged for a review of a couple different types of equipment for people who are hard of hearing to be able to access meetings more efficiently. So they felt like their process was moving ahead, and they would like to look forward to at some point meeting with the select board, but they weren't ready to do that. Karen Young, I just want you to know we have support from the town now. Lauren Beretta is here, and she's going to be taking minutes for us. So you get to actually participate in the meeting.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. Wow.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It is awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
So is everyone that's here tonight, are you all commission members?
Pam Rockwell and Carmen Jacquier are not.
Okay.
Did I say that right, Carmen? Close enough? Okay.
Okay.
And Lauren, I'm a select board member, but the way the commission is structured, the select board member that would normally be a liaison is also a voting member.
Okay. I will do my best to get the minutes right, but the first go around might need some assistance.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it, and it's great to have you here. Okay, so they asked not to go on the agenda tonight. I'll get in touch with them before the next meeting and see if there's anything else that they want that we can assist them with. We certainly do want to make sure that that any kind of meetings in town are accessible to everyone, including people who have hearing loss. Parking at 136 Sudbury Road. I did write the letter, and Jennifer Brooke added some information, another information sheet on what the standards are and how high and how large the markings need to be. And full disclosure, I just put those letters in an envelope to go in the mail tomorrow morning. So they're ready to go. I found out from the town who owns the property. So I've addressed a letter to the owner at 136 Sudbury Road, and also to his home address. So he'll get it in both places, and then hopefully we'll be able to paint a handicap decal on the parking space and put a sign up, and that should ensure that excuse me, there's always a safe handicap parking spot for people who go to the dentist there. So that brings us to the StarMet use plans. I'll turn it over to you, Pam.
Can I share my screen?
Sure, let me make you a co-host.
Yeah, I'm not really good at the host part of it. Let's see. Are you seeing my
We are.
PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
So is that filling the screen for you?
Pretty well, yes.
Okay. I'm Pam Rockwell. Live on Main Street, and I'm the chairman of the 2229 Main Street Oversight Committee, and I'm a member of the NMI StarMet Reuse Planning Committee. Our committee was formed 2 years ago in order to assist the town identifying possible ways to reuse the 2229 Main Street site once it gets cleaned up. Right now there is a design phase going on for their remediation. In about 5 to 7 years, that site's going to be cleaned up and ready for reuse. My committee, the reuse committee, is completing a report that we're going to deliver to the select board. And we have recommendations that basically the town take the site and that they use a master plan concept that we've developed to guide their remediation plan. And there's still some issues to, discuss over time. It's going to take a while, but that's what's going. We based our ideas of what we should be doing on the principles that were developed for the Long Range Planning Commission. So that there should be multiple integrated uses, that it shouldn't just be for one person to use it. And that's important when it comes to disabilities. It's important that everyone be able to access it, but also that people actually integrate at the site and people are not alone in groups at the site. We want it to be environmentally sustainable. We want it to be fiscally sustainable. We don't necessarily want to make money there, but we want to at least offset other money that the town might spend there. And we want it to be a real hub of the community. In one way, we wanted to strengthen our community, the support that's there. The implementation issues we have is that there's serious risk communication. People are nervous about this site and they need to know what's changed and what they should still be worried about at the site. We need to think about housing at this site. People build housing in Concord. Forest Ridge Road, which is zoned the same as StarMet, people have used the housing exception to put in black birch, to put in 40B housing. There's a condominium community there. There are no big industries there. The closest thing to industry is the Thoreau Club and Minuteman Arc, because people don't really want industrial sites. They want residential sites. And we have needs for affordable housing, disability housing, lots of different housing needs in our town. There are recreation needs for the town. We need to figure out the ownership issues at the site. We need to figure out the financial considerations, and we need to look carefully at what other things the town is doing and what other things people have done with Superfund sites. The first thing we did was develop a reuse map of the site to basically look at what can be reused and what can't. You can see here, this is the site. It's on Route 62. It's very close to Forest Ridge Road. It's across the street from the ice rink. There's a footprint where there was an old factory. You can see A1 at the site is where the old factory was and the big parking area for that. And there's kind of a dirt road around that. We refer to that as the ring road. There's beautiful trees along in area A2, although it's a potentially developable site and could potentially be used as backfill for the site. It's also a totally untouched area. There was never development there, and there was never any disposal of any or leaking of any kind of materials on that site. A4 is also like that. It backs up to the Thoreau Club and to the Black Birch area. It's basically untouched, pristine, environmentally beautiful forested site, fairly steep. The sweepings area there were some dredgings from a pond dumped there that need to be removed, and then that could be restored as flat or natural. Area B is where the old holding basin was. The materials in the old holding basin were removed in the 90s, and that area is basically going to be, there's some material deep underneath that poses a danger to the water that will be capped and covered, and that area will be probably restored as natural. Area D is an old cooling water pond. That's probably going to be drainage at the site. It's a wetlands, and so we can't do anything about develop anything there. Area C1, you see a big area with green slashes on it. That is a sphagnum bog. It's an incredibly rich environmental area with, it's basically a matted wetlands that attracts incredibly beautiful birds and animals to the site. The people that break into this site right now, that trespassed on this site, generally do it to do bird watching in this area because it's a really beautiful site. Areas C1 and C2, there are some small contaminated areas along the edges that are going to need to be dug up and restored, but they're going to be restored naturally, and those are natural sites. So the first thing that we looked at with this was the environmental part of it. It's 46 acres, probably 25 acres are going to be left untouched. And this map actually shows how you could link the trails that are already through Black Birch and on the conservation strip between this property and the businesses and residences along Forest Ridge Road and Thoreau Hills. That's the Powder Mill Trail network that can then be linked in so that you could actually walk onto this site, walk through this site, and we put potentially a viewing platform along the edge of the sphagnum bog so that that doesn't get damaged when people are there viewing it. Another possibility too would be for a dog park in this area, because there are a lot of people who do walk back there, who this is a part of their routines already. And so extending this and making it accessible to more people. The area of the whole old holding basin, which was area B on the map before, which is sort of to the left of the viewing platform, that area could also have a parking lot so that people could park and access the trails from this end. The other interesting part of this location is that there is public transportation that's going from that's linking Maynard and Acton and probably the train station in West Concord. This could be a transportation site along there, a bus stop or a connection there. Another way that people could get to this site without having to drive there. So the master reuse concept that we have on this site is that, again, that beautiful environmental area would be functionally left for nature trails and education. That the main area within that ring road that we talked about, that was a factory before, that will require some digging to remove basically the contaminated foundations of the building, that would be a very good site for development. That would be a really, that's the place that makes the most sense. There are parking lots already on this site that are kind of tiered. You could turn those into a several level parking deck if you wanted to. You could put a lot of parking there. There's a lot of space for development right in that site. And it could take advantage of the fact that it could have a view of the beautiful wetlands areas that are on the rest of the site. And then potentially those other areas that back up to Minuteman Arc, Black Birch, and Thoreau Club could also be developed as housing or sports fields or other uses. So we did 3 different versions of our what we might think of as being used within our master plan. So version 1 is the indoor multipurpose community space. And this would basically maybe put some sports fields on that leveled area that had to be cleaned up. But inside the ring road, we would put a major multipurpose community center. There would be major space for recreation. There would be meeting spaces. There would be maybe artisanal spaces, maybe cafeteria space for recreation events. There would be accessible program space. We used to say that this would be a senior center, but we have heard that nobody wants to leave Harvey Wheeler. However, that doesn't mean that there won't be spaces here that the same communities that use Harvey Wheeler can use that will be larger and more easily accessible. So I'm not giving examples of everything, but this is the example that we base this on, which is, this is from Colorado. This was a Superfund site that was basically has a beautiful view of the mountains, the way ours has a beautiful view of the Sphagnum Bog. It's not quite the same scale, but it's about the same square footage as the site that we're looking at. And they have ended up with a beautiful community center out of this. They actually have a pool at their site. They have tennis courts that are covered sometimes and uncovered at other times. You know, a lot of those things would compete with the Thoreau Club. We're looking at more of something that would be like a running track or basketball courts, those sorts of things that, to extend that kind of thing. But this is an example.
Are you muted? I'll make sure you're muted.
So the second concept is basically the same footprint as the other concept, except that it would be office medical space. You would be looking at something that's more like what's on Baker Avenue, sort of uses of the site. And there would be housing in some of the sites that back up to Minuteman Arc and to Black Birch, or maybe extensions of Black Birch into some of these areas. The thought was that we do have a great need for office medical space, that is something that people would like, and that people might feel more comfortable with something commercial. And then the other view is that the final concept is this mixed use concentrated area. The idea that really the hillside behind Minuteman Arc and the hillside that backs up to Black Birch, that we do not want to mess with them just because we can, but instead we want to build tall and multi-purpose within that ring road area. There is plenty of room for that. So this would be very much, if you think about it like the space, if you think about it, the parking lot behind West Concord Center, where you have housing, you have mixed use, where you have apartments above retail space, you have a mixed use sort of routine like that. And the reason that this, another comparison might be compared to the Minuteman Arc facility, the Minuteman Arc group house on at the corner of Route 62 across the street from the former 99s. You know, that's the kind of thing where you have office space or commercial space on a bottom floor and accessible housing above that. And this is just a sort of a feel for that. But it's environmentally friendly in that it's developing less area in this space. So, you know, our recommendations again are that my committee is going to be developing a process for this and figuring out whether our committee is going to end or whether another committee is going to continue with this, and to talk about risk communication at the site with people, and that we're going to be looking carefully at how we would manage to be fiscally neutral and be sustainable and engage with third parties to see about how people would want to invest in the project. And I'm going to point out that one of the big things that we have, the big hurdles that we have right now, is the idea of getting people comfortable with the idea of being there. Because basically, people remember this site when there was a big holding basin full of sludge in the backyard, when there was a building that was pumping out smoke. We want people to realize that there has been a phenomenal amount of work done, that this is not as risky a site as it was when people were living near here in the 90s. And so we're trying to develop examples of that. The report that we have contains a lot of examples of other Superfund sites that have been redeveloped and how that has been done. But another strategy that we think is important is that people will get comfortable with the site if they're used to going there. Once we have recreational trails at the site and access to the site and people get in the habit of going there, they will probably be very comfortable with the idea of doing that. There is a site in Sudbury that the Sperry Superfund site, where people don't even realize that that used to be a Superfund site. There are condo developments in the cleaner areas of the site. There is a building that has a preschool in it and offices in it that people go to every day. And people have no sense of that as being a problem because they've been going there forever. And the other big issue that we have to talk about is housing at the site. Right now, the Army is planning to clean this up to a residential standard because it's zoned for housing, and it's basically zoned equivalent to Forest Ridge Road, where even though it's called an industrial zoning, it's people have put residences there. And so we want to be sure that the residential standard is the cleanup standard. So we need to actually talk about the housing options at the site. And I hear a lot from the affordable housing people that any big buildable parcel of land is something that somebody's going to probably build housing on at some point. And we need to be responsible about considering that for affordable housing and other issues like that. So that's the kind of thing that I need your feedback on. You know, I need your feedback about things like, do you like the idea of having those kinds of recreational services? Is that something that would be nice? Could you take advantage of parking? Are there ways that you would like to see it developed for access for the community? So having some comments to this plan would be a good thing. Also, the idea of potentially disability or elderly housing. I know the guy from Black Birch would be very happy to expand his community right back to the Star Med area, just cut a road and add to it right there. That's a very reasonable sort of thing. Also, if you would feel like it's better to develop small and develop high, what sort of disability housing, disability services would you like to see addressed at this site? All of that kind of feedback. And the other thing we want to know is, do you have a problem with this site? Do you feel like it's not a good thing to put these kinds of services here, to do this kind of development here, that you are still concerned? Because we need to hear those concerns too. So there is a form, and the whole document's like 60 pages long. There's a lot of information in there, but we could really use comments. And if you have comments as a committee that you'd like to mention to me now, I can bring those back to my committee. But also I encourage everyone as an individual to take a look and submit some comments too. So did anybody have any questions? Janet?
Yeah. Are you looking for us to prefer one of these options over another? Or would you like us to just tell you what we would like included in this plan?
So when I went to the Recreation Commission, they said, we would really like to have the deed on areas C1 and C2 and conservation restriction on area B. There's no way we'd let you put a parking lot for dump trucks, so take it off your list, and we have control of that because it's a wetlands. And we would prefer to see, if it's going to be developed, that it be developed under the concept 3, which was the mixed use, because from their perspective, that was an advantage. If you have an idea that in fact recreational uses for area A1, that concept 1 would be something that would be of great benefit to the Disability Commission, I would love to hear that. But you don't, it's up to you whether you want to make a preference or address a preference, or say we missed something totally as well. That's
I like all of your plans. I like the plan that has a movie theater with dining. I think that's great. But what the town needs.
Everybody.
Hi, excuse me, if you're not speaking, could you please mute your speaker? Thank you.
What the town needs is housing that is like, we need another Peter Spring Road. We need 3-bedroom ranches. We need a whole bunch of like 3-bedroom ranches that are ground level, that are handicapped accessible. This is a wonderful spot for that. You've got enough space here to do that, plus plus a lot of other things. I personally am not linked to the Council on Aging Center. I think it's a terrible center. I think other towns are building centers that for people over 65, say, that are so much nicer than the Harvey Wheeler. that kind of a facility on this site would be great. The problem, as people point out, is getting there. It's, however, that's true of Harvey Wheeler also. You got to get there. This is just beyond it. But I think we very much need a new council on aging center, one that's more appealing, that has more, well, that's handicapped accessible for one thing, which Harvey Wheeler hardly barely is. But I think these plans are wonderful. I love them all.
So
Okay.
I'll have to point out that when I came to this commission before, you said,
Me?
no, don't put anything there. It's
I
not
said-
safe for anything. That we
I
want you
said
to
that.
put big mansions there so it can pay for a better council on aging
I
somewhere else. or
I said that. You remember what I
You
said?
did not, you were not the only one who said that. There were a lot of people on your commission who felt that way. So I'm curious,
Say
do
that
other
again,
commissions,
Pam. What was it that I said?
basically, people were uncomfortable with the idea of putting things there, that it was too far away, that maybe we were better off putting mansions there that would
I
pay
don't-
more
that was-
taxes, so
that
we
was
had more
surprising
money to
if I
put.
thought that was true. But I have a problem with people, with developers, and now is the one, what's the road, just Birch Ridge, is that what it is?
Black Birch?
Black Birch.
Well, yeah, what is the development that was promised to be affordable housing and little houses in a little community? And the pictures that he presented had a little gazebo in the middle and had these adorable little houses all around it. And
So
so
that's-
we got excited.
That's
and
Riverwalk, isn't it?
and then when it went up, it had huge houses that were $1 million. And, it wasn't at all what was proposed. I think we need another Peter Spring Road area. We need something like what was Veterans Housing a long time ago. No, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I've gotten older, PM, I've gotten wiser.
Okay.
Other commissioners, you have comments? Meryl?
Yes. To further what Janet said, I have two different comments. One of them is in terms of housing. I'd like to support what Janet was saying. Black Birch is much more expensive than anybody really
Well, then he said it was going to
anticipated.
be. Yeah.
And it doesn't really offer anything for even, they say that they're an over 50 community, but they have no services. There's no center. I don't understand how it's even a community. It's just a bunch of very nice, expensive condo houses. And the concept, we don't need more Black Birch. What we need is perhaps a community. If it's going to be a housing community, then it should be what Janet was describing, with some support, community interaction. In other words, it needs to have a community type building close by. I love the idea of the Boulder, Colorado one that has a focus of a community center. We do not have a good community center for the elderly, for other people who, unfortunately, the Beatty Center is on one side of town and doesn't meet the needs of really the entire community. It's really more of a sports club. And, the concept of it being, it's expensive to join for the average, for people of average income. And I don't see that it even provides that much for, in terms of programming for the community at large. I don't mean to get into a discussion of Beatty, but the concept of having a multi-use center, or even moving, the COA. I mean, I just cannot, I totally agree that the Harvey Wheeler, which is very convenient for a lot of people, it really does not meet the needs of either the disability community or the community at large. I think it's a lovely building, but it's very oriented to a very small population of people, because it doesn't have the space, quite honestly.
So I'll have to say that we have talked about the idea of the first version of this slides. I'll talk about moving the Council on Aging over to this site, and the Council on Aging says, no, we want program space over there. We'd be glad to take advantage of having tracks and meeting rooms and events and things like that there, but that they were not interested at all. So right now we're not going to make a decision like that, but that doesn't mean that a facility that's built there, after people get comfortable with it, finally say, hey, this is better connected and we're more comfortable and we're doing so many of our programs over here, why not move over here? That is the kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
I'm gonna say
I want to let other people have some chance to,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
provide some input. Mary Beth, you had your hand up, and then Bonnie.
Yes. I feel like, Pam, I appreciate that you invited comments from people who feel uncomfortable. I think
Yeah.
I'm in that category.
Absolutely.
I'm not uncomfortable with it being used for some of the purposes you've talked about. Maybe the nature trails, maybe some commercial space. The thing that I'm most uncomfortable about is using a Superfund site for housing, particularly housing for sort of traditionally marginalized populations in the United States. I mean, we have a very bad track record of environmental racism and discrimination for low-income people, people with disabilities, elders, and I do feel very much, I feel uncomfortable about sort of saying that, yeah, let's build that kind of housing on a Superfund site. I mean, I can't say to you that, or anybody, that they're wrong when they say it's unsafe. For all I know, it's perfectly safe, but I just have a discomfort with it. And so I just wanted to say that.
So I'm going to report that, and
Yep.
you're not the only one. And I feel very comfortable reporting that you're saying no housing, especially because of the environmental justice issue of not
Yes.
putting people who are marginalized and who might not be able to afford, something into
Affirmative.
situation of living on a Superfund site.
Correct.
And I think that's a really valuable thing. But I do want to point out about this site is that this is a really, really well-known site. We have really done a lot of investigation here. And there are parts of this site, like areas A2 and A4, that have never been touched. They're much more pristine than your backyard. And that doesn't mean that your backyard is so pristine, because yours has not been tested as well as this site has. And that is something to be considered. And also that the town will never own the liability of this site. The liability for the problems that were here are the Army and a couple of other companies that participated with StarMet at this site. Those other companies are actually doing the management of the cleanup at this site. It's Textron and Whitaker. The Army is paying the bills. They have a big escrow account, and of course, these companies are it is taxpayer money that's paying for this cleanup at this site, so they are being careful about it. But they are also recognizing that they do not want to, they will own the liability forever, and they do not want to have to dig this up and do it again later. that they are very, very proactive about, as they find things at this site, taking care of them. So it's
Okay.
almost this adversarial
I
system.
want to move, excuse me, Pam, I want to move on. Bonnie had a comment.
Bonnie?
Yeah. Hi, thank you so much. There's so much work in here I can see. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. My main concern here is it's isolated from any walkability. And especially if you're going to have housing that's more accessible and more accessible, people need accessibility are living there. They're really isolated if there isn't good transportation. And that goes for kind of any housing, especially kids are going to try to walk down that road, going to town and stuff. So I'm in Pam's camp. I think that's a great idea, especially with those other concerns as well of the commercial plus the walking trails and the bird watching. But
I couldn't hear you after bird watching. Bonnie, I can't
sorry,
hear you.
I have unstable internet. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
So
Yes.
from bird watching.
Okay. Sorry, my internet's a little unstable. Yeah. So you heard me say about walkability.
Right.
Okay.
So okay.
Yep. That's really it. I do like the commercial space plus the bird watching. And again, thank you for doing that.
So I'm going to point out that this actually might be a lot more accessible than you realize, because there is a lot of walking from, there is potential walking from Thoreau Hills back through the trails, back through Forest Ridge Road. That there's a good chance that there's going to be a good transit link at this site one way or another. Even the town is talking about wanting tourist buses to park here during the day when their tourists are around Concord Center. This is very close to the Stop and Shop and the drugstore, right? I guess it's now Walgreens. It is in Acton, not in Concord, but this is a pretty accessible site. There are a lot of people that live very close to this site along Forest Ridge Road. It is a very populated road, Forest Ridge Road. It's very dense. So there is potentially a lot of connection in this site that I don't know that and people do talk about this being sort of at the other end of the world. Well, being someone who lives in West Concord, a lot of the things that are in Concord are at the other end of the world. I drove my kids to Banta Davis to play soccer for years in Carlisle. So, it's kind of, it's hard to say that this is not. The other thing is that there is massive redevelopment going on on Route 62. The Route 62 corridor through Acton and Maynard, basically between this site and the new development in Maynard along Route 27, that's a big shopping center, and there's a market basket, and there's a whole bunch of shopping and two different kinds of housing, and basically between here and there, there's a lot of commercial development going on. There's a new food co-op going in right in Maynard Center. There is going to be new housing just in that little stretch in Acton, apparently. So there's a lot of connection that's not necessarily in Concord for those people as well.
I see that. I hear what you're saying. I think about, can someone walk down, cross the street and go to the store? So, an area like this is just too far. Stowe Street, over by Crosby's development there, that's the kind of thing I think where, as a town, we should put more accessible housing and affordable housing in near the commuter rail and such. But I do think that any of this is going to be great. So.
Okay, I'm going to point out, I have a son that's 21 years old that's autistic, and from my perspective, West Concord is not a place for him to live because the only grocery store is Deborah's right now, and it's too expensive for him.
Excuse me, Pam.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to hear the comments of the people on this commission.
Okay.
So I think Jennifer has a comment to make.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I missed the very beginning of our meeting. I'm Jennifer, Pam. So just a couple of points. I do believe that this site can be cleaned up to a residential level. And as a professional, I run a landscape architecture office. Everyone in this commission knows that we've worked on projects like this, and they can be cleaned up. So I'm going to go with you and say that this place can be cleaned up. I have no doubts about that. I just want to make a couple of points outside of that. There's no such thing as disability housing. I know we're in an informal conversation here. Words matter. There's no such thing as disability housing. The reality is, as you probably already know, a lot of disabled people don't get employed, and that's not fair. And then when you don't get employed and you're living off of support from the government, you don't have that much money to afford for housing. So a lot of our affordable housing in Massachusetts is actually used by people with disabilities. And so you end up with affordable housing being a default for disabled people. So so this is the Disability Commission, and I think as a matter of right, that is one of the most pressing needs that we can address for disabled people in our community. And when I say disabled people, I mean of all stripes, whether it's a physical disability, intellectual disability, a developmental disability, or just the disability that I'm now experiencing of just getting older. And one of the things that comes along with disability, affordable housing would be, like I said, the main concern is, to follow up on Bonnie's point, is being able to walk places. And I agree with you. I actually think it's ridiculous to think that we're going to put in commercial space in this site. I wouldn't put a store there, because who's going to drive here and go to a boutique store? There's already a shopping center right next door. It's already got a supermarket in it. I don't know what kind of commercial space you could put here unless it's office space. You'll end up with like a Baker Ave scenario with doctor's offices and spaces that are like class A, class B office space, and no one will ever go there except for the people who work there. It'll be nothing. Maybe the trails can be developed around it, which is really great. I think it's an excellent site for affordable housing if you can make pedestrian connections to Minuteman Arc, to the trails, along Route 62, which is dangerous. You already know this. People drive really fast. They drive really crazy fast. Leaving the light on the other side, or at the Acton border, they tear ass down 62. So I think there's a concern that if you're going to develop the site, the sidewalks on either side of 62 need to be developed. They need to be made safe. There might even need to be traffic control issues right in this one little area, because having this place with housing and having that shopping area so close, that's extraordinary. That doesn't happen that often. It's a great place for affordable housing. Make it nice and put in a center, a community center that's for the people living in the affordable housing that's there. So anyway, it's a combination of comments that have already been made in support of affordable housing, if it's well done, made pedestrian, and with the supports necessary to make life living there good for people with disabilities.
Okay. Karen, you haven't made a comment. Do you have anything you wanted to say about this?
Hi, I think mostly what I wanted to say has already been said. When I looked at these plans, my major concern was also accessibility, especially if housing were to be on this site, and just the whole issue of traffic. I mean, Route 62 is a 2-lane road, and we're talking about, increasing significantly the traffic to this area. And so I would hope that there would be plans in place to look at that infrastructure, and maybe if there is housing, reconstruct that intersection with Forest Ridge and the Stop and Shop, somehow to make it so that you could actually cross from Forest Ridge to the Stop and Shop, which is now next to impossible if you're on foot. And I guess overall, I agree completely that that it is a developable site. If there was to be some kind of public transportation. That would be a huge plus. And, but I guess I'm kind of more leaning into the mixed use trails and community, possible community center usage as opposed to housing.
Okay.
But depending on
Thank
how
you.
that all works out, you know, I think there's a lot of potential there. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Meryl, I see you have your hand up. Let me just
Yes.
make one comment and then
Yes,
if you,
just, oh,
yeah,
go
go
right
ahead,
ahead.
Meryl. Go ahead,
I
Meryl.
just want to, the other thing I wanted to say is I'm the liaison to the Transportation Committee in town. And I think it would be key for you in gathering information to speak with the Transportation Committee, because we're trying to be planful, and you know, everything hinges on what is this really going to do in terms of, you know, linking up with the rest of the town. You mentioned this transit link, which I was totally unaware of. And I don't even know whether Concord is considering linking up with it. You know, that's a big issue. You know, getting transportation to this quote remote area of Concord seems to be a key in determining what its use would be.
Okay, thank you, Meryl. And my final comment would just be to ensure that whatever gets built here is fully accessible, that the best use of universal design to make sure that, you know, if there are going to be trails, that some of that trail is accessible and that there's accessible parking nearby so that people can use the trail and see the bog area and do some bird watching. That any kind of course, any new construction would have to fall under the ADA. My only other comment would be, I think it will be exceedingly difficult to make a new multi-use building absolutely finance neutral, unless you have some major grants out there that will pay for that. But that will be a challenge for your committee, Pam, and for the town.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on because we've got several other things to talk about tonight.
Could I ask one thing before I go? So I only heard one person say, I think this will never be safe enough to put housing. Is that really the way people feel? That there's only one person who really feels that way anymore? Because I got the impression there were a lot more of you that felt that way when I was here before.
That was a while ago, Pam. I think time has passed.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, I'd encourage you to make comments on your own if you feel like you can't talk about that here. So.
Okay. Pam, if you can send me the email address for sending comments, I'll share it with the whole commission.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Can you stop sharing? Thanks,
Yeah,
thanks,
did I do
Pam.
it?
Okay, good. All right. So there are three more things that we really need to talk about. That's a couple of requests for some funding, a letter from 51 Walden asking for support in a variance to the AAB, and some new changes to the planning for White Pond. So, and I do want to also mention, I sent out this afternoon the information about conflict of interest. So all of us have to complete that and send it in. So please pay attention to that. Please do that and get that into the town. Thank you. So let's talk just a minute about requests for funding. One of them is from a group of parents who are working on putting together a dramatic program this spring, probably sometime in April, that will be like an old-fashioned radio program sort of format. It's going to be done on Zoom, and they haven't made a formal request yet, but they are asking for some support because they want to have a pre-made video in ASL of the program so that everyone can access it. So that's one potential request for funding. There's also a request for some, I think, partial funding. And let me share my screen here. If I can find the right thing. Sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm not able to find the pictures, but the Concord Rotary is planning to put an accessible drinking fountain in the little pocket park around the Concord Bell Memorial. That's right in Concord Center. It's right kind of at that corner where Monument Square and Main Street come together. And they built that whole park. They used up all of their funds to build it a couple of years ago, but they didn't get the drinking fountain installed. So now they are looking at installing the drinking fountain, and they're wondering if the Commission on Disabilities would not pay for the whole thing, but make a contribution toward the drinking fountain, because it will be accessible and it will be something that you know, everyone who is in that area of Concord Center will be able to use, including dogs, Jennifer. You maybe have seen these drinking fountains. They're in a number of locations around town. There's one is it called Depot Park, right near the West Concord train station. There's one by the Concord Museum. So I contacted Kate Hodges to find out how much money we have in our account, because we get a portion of the handicap parking fines. Well, we're doing pretty well. We have $5,380 in that account at this point. And she recommended that instead of just sort of saying, sure, we'll give you this money, that we put together some kind of application process and an application form, so that, you know, there's a kind of a regimented procedure that we use in order to evaluate things like that. So I wanted to just find out, are you all interested in us doing that? And if so, I'm happy to work on developing a form and kind of a process, something very simple, because I think we can probably have the most effect on some smaller projects where, you know, an organization needs maybe a few $100s for something, or an individual for a specific reason, versus the big deal projects. So if there's someone else that would work on it with me, I would really welcome that. Okay, don't everybody volunteer at once.
What would that involve, Jean?
Well, we will need to do a simple, I think, form that people can fill out that would say what the project is, how it will expand accessibility in Concord, and why they're asking for the Commission to fund or partially fund it. and then ask them to put together a budget for the project that would show, how much they're looking for from us, and maybe how much the whole project costs if it's something a little larger and they're looking for a portion of the cost, like the case with the Rotary drinking fountain.
Jean, this is Jane.
I'll-
Can I just offer, I will make sure that the team, the form here has access to the forms that the CPC already uses to evaluate theirs. That
Right.
the, like Hugh Cargill Trust or any of the other committees that have to make these kind of decisions,
Mhm.
because there's no reason for the Disability Commission to reinvent a wheel that's already working well. This is going to be a different wheel, but the process isn't.
True. Thank you, Jane. That would be really helpful. I think we want to make it a much easier process than applying for the CPA funds, but some of the same information will be needed, of course.
I'd be glad to help work on that with you. Jean.
Okay, thanks, Mary Beth.
You're welcome.
Also, I'm glad Jane mentioned the Hugh Cargill Trust. I think that it's sort of a segue into a concern I have about about visibility in the community and publicity for our committee. I don't know if, I certainly don't want to jump into handing out some dollars to whomever happens to realize that we have a little pot of gold. And therefore, I'd like to at least first, pursue, the idea of that this process already exists, but also that that people become aware that we're trying to help the community, and that we need some more feedback as to what people would like to see happen in the community. So I don't know how to publicize this, but I think it's a perfect opportunity to do so. I think that there may be really more pressing needs than the water fountain. I mean, it's a nice little thing, but I'm really concerned that there are a lot of problems that people with disabilities face. And I think that we could really make, more of a contribution in some other areas.
Okay,
I was going to say the exact.
yes,
almost
go
the
ahead,
exact-
Bonnie.
I was going to say almost the exact same thing as Meryl. So those two issues, making sure everyone knows about it, and then having a fair process that is, puts our interests ahead. It's our priorities.
Thank you.
And
Sure.
I hate to do this to the folks, but I have to jump off. I've got a 6 o'clock call. So I will see you next time.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
Can I just
Mary
ask a
Beth.
question? Is it, do I understand correctly that tonight you're not asking us to make a decision about giving money to this water fountain? What
No.
you're saying is that instead of just doing that, let's have a process, an application, and then we can see at every, whether we look at applications every 6 months, every 4 months, we get an application for a water fountain, we've got an application for this, that, and the other thing, and then we can decide, right? That's all we're really talking about tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Janet.
I think that that contributing to the water fountain is a great idea. It's not a lot of money and it's very convenient, and it's for people in wheelchairs. It would be great. I think it's a great idea. And so I just want to dip my oar in there.
Okay.
How much is being requested?
So there's not a set amount that's being requested.
Oh.
And to Mary Beth's point, we're not making a decision tonight on giving money to either of these potential requests, but to recognize that we certainly need, we do have some funds that we could use to help people in Concord access things better. And but we need to have a process for how we distribute funds like that. Jennifer.
I just, to go back, I think it's more than just, it's about setting a kind of a criteria for ourselves. We just need a defensible place to come from first. And then second, again, to Bonnie and Meryl's point about the goals of giving away money. Is it like one could give it to a water fountain, but one could also give it as a scholarship for a student project that's working on disability in the community, right? So I just think along with that simple application, maybe a set of criteria would be helpful,
Okay.
or goals from our set. I'm happy to write some things down and just send them to you.
Great, thank
so that
you.
you have some more to work with. I think to some extent it maybe should be a group effort. Like, what is the goal of this commission in terms of using those dollars? Is it just to improve daily life? Is it for the future, for education, for
Right.
whatever it might be.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, so we'll work on the application, the process, some criteria, some timing for the next meeting, and then we can share that with the whole commission and make some decision around that. Okay, should we talk a bit about White Pond?
Where does it stand?
So let me see if I can share my screen now. Okay, here we go. So I think I sent you all this earlier today. Do you see the pictures?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so these were some changes based on the comments that the commission made. And Carmen, I see you're still on the call. Do you want to comment on any of these?
Sure. They heard your concern about the length of the path. They said they did shift it a bit. It actually saved 7 trees, but I do not think it didn't make a difference in the length of 1,100 feet. But they do plan to put 4 benches along it. And they know that they have to be set so that somebody could be on the bench, and if they have some kind of appliance because of disability, that they're not impeding into the path, and that they feel comfortable. And then they, last time Jennifer Brooks spoke about that it was too long a distance to go from the blacktop drop-off area to the wooden ramp and then to get to the beach. So they changed and made these, if you come back down a bit, I'm sorry.
Here?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, so that's what they did with the stairs and a ramp with the Moby mat. And it's right there at the bathrooms. And if you continued outward on the right, you would get to what they call the overview, which is like an open viewing area. And our committee wanted to know how you viewed that change there for the entrance at the bottom.
I'll speak up if it's okay, Jean, just
Yes,
because that was
yes,
something
please.
I spoke to. I think this is a much more direct connection from the parking area where the drop off, where that red car is shown in this perspective, and how you get down to the blue mat. So you have a much more direct connection to the beach here. I think previously you had to go across the wooden boardwalk in front of like the bathrooms there, and then come down on the other side, if I remember correctly. So I think this is pretty cool. I think it definitely satisfies the concern that I had. There's going to be handrail issues with the stairs that need to be just accommodated. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but as far as accessibility and creating a walkable, manageable space to get from that drop off to the beach, I think it's much better. Thank you.
Also on the, well, it's on the one that is kind of the overall view. They're these circles along the path. Yes, they are on the left. Those circles are boulders, and they're to be 18 to 24 inches high. And they're to be right up on the path also, partly not to impede or impact tree roots, but also to be a sitting area. So they view those as another kind of sitting option besides the benches, which will be made of some permeable material. When you said railings with the stair area, Jennifer, what did you mean with that new entry area?
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm going to put my designer hat, my design critic hat on for a minute here. Blended stairs and ramp conditions are so sexy and so much fun to design, and they look really cool in a drawing like this, and they look really cool in plan. They're actually really dangerous.
You know, I wondered about that.
From a liability perspective, they're really dangerous, and you're next to sand. So like, not only do you have a sloped smooth surface that's got stairs, which would each have to be highlighted at the leading edge with a contrasting color so that you can see them, so that they're accessible stairs, right? It needs to be a 70% contrast between so basically you have like a 3M tape right along the leading edge of each stair. The tape will peel up because it's sand. It's a tough thing to make happen really well without people getting hurt. The edges where the steps feather into the walkway are a little tricky. That has to be under 5% in order to have no handrail, as you know, on the ramp itself. And I'm guessing that that's what it is because it's shown with no handrail on the ramp. So I'm just observing that it's hard to do this well without people getting just confused. I'm worried about like sand blurring the edges even further between the stairs and the ramp, and it's a tough go. If the ramp is really wide, it's better because then you can stay towards the middle and there's plenty of passing space in the middle of the ramp. But if it's a narrow ramp, if it's only a 5-foot wide ramp, and you're pushing strollers and you've got beach gear, it's a hard design scenario to make work. That's all.
Jennifer, can I ask a question? Do you have to have a set of stairs everywhere you have a ramp, or could it just be a ramp?
It could just be a ramp. Make it wider and make it a ramp. And then, to be honest, you're getting far closer to a universal design solution, which is where you've set out one way for everyone to go together. And there you go. So I think an even better solution is to lose the stairs altogether and just have a wider ramp that comes down. You'll probably need a retaining wall in there instead of the stairs, obviously, because you're changing grade and you want to meet that blue Moby mat. But yeah, you don't need stairs everywhere. As long as you have a ramp, you're good.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I also, when I looked at that and I saw that feathering, I thought that's tricky for just regular people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, and then we have the request from 51 Walden, which they are looking to install a ventilation system that will better ventilate the building and help to protect people in terms of, I don't know that it can totally protect against COVID, but it protect against, free floating viruses in the air. And they've got a bid for $370,000, which would definitely kick this whole project into needing to make every space accessible. So we did support their design a year and a half ago now, I think, because we felt they made so much progress toward better accessibility that that we wanted to support the efforts that they were doing, and you know, and not make them have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise every single inch of that historic building to accessible standards. So they're basically asking us the same kind of thing in this letter. Would we continue to support that? Would we support their variance with the AAB to not have to bring every space in the building up to standards? Comments? Jennifer?
I remember this really well, Jean. And as much as I wished that we could require that every facility be ADA compliant through and through from start to finish, I remember this site, they've done a lot to create accessibility where accessibility is necessary. And it doesn't sit well with me that their upgrade to a ventilation system would trigger them more or less to be out of business because they couldn't afford to make the entire building accessible. So I would strongly support supporting 51 Walden with a letter in that they've done everything that they need to do to make the site accessible for their patrons. It's, you know, just as an aside, I think for what might be useful, Jean, is to have the 51 Walden folks just walk us through again, because we do have new commission members, just to walk us through again, you know, a day in a life of a person using a mobility device in their facility, whether they do it in a diagram or whether they can do it in person is harder to do, but I think it would be really helpful for them to demonstrate again, just to remind everyone of how a person using a mobility device would visit their facility and use the restrooms and get in and out of the building, just so everyone knows. And that we're not asking anyone to just, you know, blindly go along with this. I think that would be really helpful. So if you haven't been in the building in a while, which none of us have because of COVID, but prior to that, you wouldn't know all the things that they've done to make it accessible. I don't think their green room is accessible.
No.
Right. And I don't think it's possible for them to make the green room accessible without you know, tearing the building down, essentially. But outside of that, everything else looked pretty good a year and a half ago.
Okay. So let me ask you all, would you like to hold on this request and ask them to come to our next meeting to walk us through? Or do you want to proceed with saying we approve the request? However, we'd really like to have you come and share the design with us again. Bonnie, you had a comment?
I was just going to say what you said. Sorry, my connection is bad, but let's support them and then also see afterwards.
Okay.
So let them move forward.
Okay, then I think we need a motion, since this is something that will come formally from the commission. We need a motion and a second, and we can vote on it.
Jean, I would motion that we take your second option, that we approve and give them a letter of support, and ask them in addition afterwards to come in and just walk our commission through all of their accessibility upgrades.
Okay.
I second it.
All right. Lauren, we would need to have you call people by name for voting for purposes of Zoom meetings.
So Jennifer, you made the motion to support their request, and Meryl, you seconded.
Correct.
Okay, great.
And no, I meant you need to call on each member to vote yes or no. Yeah.
Okay. So Mary Beth,
Yes, I support it.
Karen,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
and Jean.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Jennifer, can I call on you to help craft the letter?
Sure,
Thank you.
sure, of course.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've made it through this whole agenda. We're a little over our usual 6 o'clock time. But thank you all. Next month, we've got 2 major agenda items. The committee that's been working on the new junior high school wants to come and share with us kind of a status of where they're at. And Lloyd, who was not feeling well and couldn't join us tonight, wanted to talk about the needs of people with cognitive disabilities, and just start a discussion around that. So we'll have those 2 things. And then I'm not sure if the hearing loss group is going to be ready to come back. And Bonnie, you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I was wondering if we could schedule some time, either next time or the time after that, to talk about what Jennifer was saying about how do we make decisions about the donations
Mhm.
and what are our priorities. I'd also like to add that a while back we talked about maybe giving an annual award, just to keep the groups
Mhm.
together and to keep positive motion in the town and across departments. And I would like to revisit that, especially with the work that Kate Hodges has been doing lately.
Okay, that's a great idea. And, you know, maybe we time it with the anniversary of the ADA in the summertime.
I'd also like to add, if possible, just to combine what Bonnie said with basic publicity, and maybe that would be a good tie-in with,
Mhm.
the summer celebration of the ADA.
Okay. Yes, Jennifer.
Um, it just occurred to me, I don't know if it's too late to help with this, but Governor Baker has just said that people over the age of 75, if they go to a COVID vaccination site and they have someone else with them, whether it's a neighbor or a
Yes.
relative, that they can get vaccinated as well. We haven't really addressed vaccination in our disability community. And
Right.
I feel like our commission could be really helpful, but I don't know. I think it would take, I don't know whether there's enough time to put together something that would be helpful, but if anyone has any ideas, I feel like that's just an area where I wish we had thought about it sooner.
Sure.
Me
It could be
too.
helpful.
Yeah,
I second that. I've been really grappling with the whole question of, what do people, the people with disabilities seem to be completely left out of the vaccination tiers. And I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration of how people with disabilities get vaccinated.
well, I can give you a little bit of information on that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but before I do that, it sounds like we've got a number of issues that are sort of a little more pressing, vaccinations being one. We've got this request from the school group, parents group, and their program is going to be in April, so they're going to need to know fairly soon. Maybe we really should think about doing 2 meetings, do another one in 2 weeks, and then our one in our usual time in March. Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay. All right. I'll schedule that. So that would be the 25th of February.
Okay.
Okay. And then again on March 11th. In terms of people with disabilities as a whole, I think there are a number of groups who are being somewhat overlooked. But I will share with you, people who live in congregate care were in the first group, and there was a huge push to get those people and the staff who work with them vaccinated. So we at Minuteman Arc, we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with CVS, who came on site. We had our first vaccine clinic on January 15th. It was Pfizer vaccine, and we got 162 people vaccinated. We had our second vaccine clinic just this past Friday on February 5th. And we got, all those people got their second shots, and we had another 100 people who got first shots. So there's some recognition of that. And I know the Arc of Mass is spearheading an effort for family members to send letters to the governor about pulling folks who have IDD, who live at home with families, into the higher priority group and the family member. So that's a letter writing campaign. Unfortunately, that's only one group of people with disabilities. It doesn't cover everybody, but one group is one group. It's a start. It's a step. So, you know, that's what I know, what I can tell you. And
I would also second your letter writing to the governor about their insistence on using the mass vaccination sites instead of sending them to our local communities, because to send, you know, the very frail elderly to a vaccination site, you know, however many miles away, is just ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It's
I've already written one letter. Yeah.
Yeah, once a night or something, because it's crazy.
Absolutely.
yeah, you're absolutely right, Lauren. And I know the COA has set up at least one clinic.
We did, and we're allowed to request 100 a week, and we were denied last week. So the town made a request for vaccine, and they didn't get it. So
And 100 a week, at 100 a week, it's going to take months.
There are 3,800 seniors over the age of 75 in Concord. 100 a week, that's going to take you a very long time, you know. And Emerson Hospital also didn't get their vaccines that they requested, because I mean, don't get me started, but you know, it has something to do with the governor's relationship with whoever is doing the vaccines at the mass sites, because they're prioritizing that beyond community needs.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's a terrible situation. It really is terrible. I feel very at risk. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the town was ready. The town was planning and ready to do multiple, you know, 400 at a time vaccination clinics every week, and then they found out that they weren't going to get the vaccine. So, I mean, the town is planning it. They're ready as soon as they get the vaccine. So.
yeah.
I wonder if the town has been bothering the governor. I mean, I know you have, and the COA
Yeah, but the
has.
health department has, and the, you know, the fire chief and the town manager, and pretty much anyone who can kick up a fuss is doing it.
We have to admit
Wow.
that we're pretty fortunate here out in Concord, and there are a lot of communities of color that need it much more than us. So it stinks that there isn't enough to go around for everybody immediately, but I'm okay waiting longer and letting people who are at much higher risk get them first.
Mhm.
So that's my 2 cents.
One category of people with disabilities, and which we already have on our agenda that Lloyd put on, are people with dementia. I have been involved trying to help my husband get his 89-year-old mother vaccinated, who has dementia and lives at home. And it's been really tough because people, that first of all, you can't take her to Gillette Stadium or to Fenway Park. It's just crazy. We did
Right.
manage to get an appointment for her at the Reggie Lewis Center. She lives in West Roxbury, so that was acceptable. But the first few appointments were all during, like, they were like 5 p.m. And if you are familiar with dementia, many people sundown. It's
Right.
the absolute worst time of day.
Absolutely.
You are dealing with a different individual at 10 in the morning than you are at 5 p.m. And, just the thought of having to go and have her freak out and say, take me home, and be with aides who would love her and trying their best to take care of her. I mean, it would just be anyway,
Oh.
but we did finally sort of work something out. We got her appointment changed. Now my husband's able to bring her and he can get vaccinated too, since they have the new policy, which is great. But there are people with dementia and with mental illness. I think not just people with dementia, but people who are, because of psychiatric problems, are fearful of leaving their homes. And you just can't ask them to go
absolutely.
stand in a line, And I think that maybe we can talk about that next time with Lloyd and some of the work he's done around the needs of people with cognitive disabilities. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Beth. And you're right. I think Lloyd can really add to that discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep
Well,
your,
I have
keep
people
your ears out. Yeah, go ahead, Janet.
Well, I'm just curious, you're all talking about the major sites. I just got an appointment very easily at Walgreens in Chelsea. Just called, somebody did it for me because I had to, they had done it for, she had done it for her own father.
You were very lucky. That's
Well,
all I can say.
Well, I don't know because she could have gotten any number, or she asked me the choices of drugstores, which one would I would prefer. And I know that people have had trouble, and I would not.
Between my husband and I, we've spent hours on the phone calling Wegmans, Walgreens, this one, that one, the 211 line for the state. I mean, it was really finally the Boston Strong Commission, which is the Boston COA, I guess, that helped us.
Yeah, I was lucky because somebody else did it for me.
Yeah, that's.
Ah.
Oh, yeah, this young woman who was determined to have everybody she knows over 70.
I have to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've run quite a bit over. So let's, listen and bring information to the next meeting. And I can send you all a link to a website if you'd like that directs people to all those many CVS and Wegmans and Walgreens and so forth, if you would find that helpful.
I think that's kind of the way to go rather than try like the Reggie Lewis Center or Gillette.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of effort.
It takes a lot of effort. Yeah.
Also, I've already told the COA, but I'd be glad to drive someone to a site if they have an appointment, and I could get a shot, for myself.
Yeah, but it's really difficult. It's really risky to drive someone in your car is the problem.
Yeah.
In a small space. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Let me.
All right. We'll carry on with this in 2 weeks. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Have a great Lunar New Year. Have a great Valentine's Day and President's Day coming up on Monday. It's a big weekend. So,
who do I send the draft of the minutes to? Karen, should I send them
to me and to Karen.
Okay, I don't think I have Karen's information, so if you want to email that to me, and then I'll send it back to both of you.
I'll do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Lauren. Bye.